The bridge of the exploration ship Horizon's Edge was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers. Commander Jake Morrison stood near the main window, looking out at the stars. His crew had been on this mission for 6 months, checking the outer edges of human space for any signs of alien life. "Sir, we have something on long-range sensors," called out Lieutenant Emma Brooks from her station. She was the ship's tactical officer, a young woman with sharp eyes and quick thinking. Multiple contacts approaching from hyperspace. Jake turned around and walked to the center of the bridge. "How many contacts?" "I count at least 200 ships, sir. Maybe more." "They're big." Emma's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "These aren't asteroids or space debris. These are definitely artificial constructs." The bridge crew became very alert. This was what they had been waiting for, what humanity had been preparing for since they first left Earth. First contact with an alien species. "All stations, battle ready, but do not power weapons," Jake ordered. "Communications, try to establish contact. Science team, I want full scans of those ships." The main screen flickered to life, showing the incoming fleet. Even from this distance, the alien ships looked impressive. They were long and curved, made of what appeared to be crystal and metal combined. Each ship gleamed with a soft blue light that pulsed along its hull like a heartbeat. "Sir, they're responding to our communication attempts," reported Tom Wilson, the communications officer. He was a calm man who rarely got excited about anything, but now his voice carried a hint of nervousness. "Put them on screen," Jake said. The image that appeared made several crew members take a step back. The alien was tall, at least 8 feet, with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow. Its head was elongated like a lizard, but it wore what looked like a military uniform covered in strange symbols. "I am Admiral Keth of the Valkan Empire," the creature said in perfect English. "Your primitive translation systems are adequate. For basic communication, you will identify yourselves immediately." Jake stepped forward. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Force. This is our exploration vessel, Horizon's Edge. We welcome this first contact between our peoples." Admiral Keth made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like a growl. "First contact. Yes, this is indeed significant. Your species has reached a level of development that requires our attention." "Your attention?" Jake asked. "The Valkan Empire has brought order to this sector of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. We have guided 17 primitive species into proper civilization. Today we extend the same opportunity to humanity." The way the aliens said opportunity made Jake's stomach tighten. This did not sound like a friendly diplomatic mission. "What kind of opportunity?" Jake asked carefully. Admiral Keth's image became clearer as his ship moved closer. Behind him, Jake could see other aliens working at control stations. The bridge looked advanced, with displays that seemed to float in the air and controls that responded to mere gestures. "Your species will submit to Valkan authority," Admiral Keth said simply. "Your planets will be administered by our governors. Your people will be relocated to designated areas where they can be properly supervised. Your primitive military will be disbanded, as it will no longer be necessary under our protection." The bridge of the Horizon's Edge went very quiet. Jake felt his crew looking at him, waiting for his response. This was not the peaceful first contact that everyone had hoped for. "I see," Jake said slowly. "And if we refuse this generous offer?" "Refusal is not recommended." Admiral Keth gestured, and the main screen split to show the alien fleet in detail. There were over 300 ships, each one massive and bristling with weapons that hummed with energy. "Our fleet represents the finest military engineering. In this galaxy, we have never encountered a species capable of meaningful resistance." Emma whispered urgently in Jake's ear. "Sir, those ships are huge. Each one is almost 2 kilometers long. The energy readings we're getting suggest weapons that could destroy entire cities." Jake nodded slightly but kept his face calm. "Admiral Keth, this is a significant decision that affects all of humanity. We would need time to discuss this with our government." "Time." The alien seemed amused. "Very well. You have 6 hours?" to contact your leaders and arrange for proper surrender protocols. We will remain here at the edge of your system. Do not attempt to flee or call for military assistance. Our sensors can detect any ship movement within 50 light years. 6 hours seems very short for such an important decision, Jake said. It is more time than we usually provide, Admiral Keth replied. Most species understand the futility of resistance immediately. Perhaps humans require additional time to process their situation. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, trained professionals, who had volunteered to explore unknown space. They did not deserve to be the ones who had to face humanity's first hostile alien contact. Emma, send a priority message to Earth Command. Full details of this encounter, Jake ordered. Tom, I want continuous monitoring of that fleet. Any movement, any change in their formation, I want to know immediately. Sir, called out Doctor. Lisa Park, the ship's science officer. I've been analyzing their ship designs. The technology is definitely advanced, but there's something interesting about their approach. What do you mean? Jake asked. Their ships are built for efficiency and elegance. Very clean energy signatures, minimal waste heat. It's impressive. Engineering, but it's also predictable. Everything follows the same design philosophy. Jake frowned, and that tells us what? It tells us they've never had to adapt their designs for serious opposition. These ships are built by a species that expects to win through technological superiority alone. Emma looked up from her station. Sir, I'm detecting more ships jumping in. The fleet is now over 400 vessels. Through the main window, Jake could see distant points of light that represented the alien fleet. They hung in space like deadly stars, waiting for humanity's response. Each ship was a work of art, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Hey, sir, Tom said quietly. What are we going to tell them? Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea that their freedom was being threatened by aliens who saw them as primitives to be managed. He thought about humanity's history, about how they had always found a way to fight, back against those who would control them. We're going to tell them that humanity needs time to prepare our response, Jake said finally. And while we're preparing, we're going to make sure they understand exactly what kind of species they're dealing with. The bridge crew looked at each other nervously. They all knew that their small exploration ship was no match for the alien fleet. But they also knew that the Horizon's Edge was not humanity's only presence in space. Far from it. And as Valkan Empire were about to learn something important about humans, they did not surrender easily, and they had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Deep beneath the red surface of Mars, in a facility that most humans did not know existed, Fleet Admiral Diana Ross received the emergency transmission from the Horizon's Edge. The underground command center was massive, carved into solid rock, and reinforced with the strongest materials humanity had ever created. Hundreds of officers worked at their stations, monitoring every corner of human space. Diana was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. While most of humanity lived peaceful lives on Earth in the colonies, Diana and her team had been building something that the galaxy had never seen before. Alert level red, Diana announced, her voice echoing through the command center. Operation Thunderbolt is now active. All stations confirm ready status. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Taylor, her second in command, looked up from his console. Admiral, all deep space monitoring stations report the alien fleet is holding position at the edge of the Sol system. They appear to be waiting. Good. Let them wait. Diana walked to the center of the command center, where a massive holographic display showed the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of the alien ships. Response units are in position. 15 minutes for the advanced scouts. 2 hours for the main battle groups, Mike replied. Diana nodded. The Valkan Empire had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that the small exploration ship they encountered represented humanity's military capability. They had no idea what humans were really capable of building when they put their minds to it. Send the activation codes, Diana ordered. All hidden facilities, all reserve fleets, all special projects, everything goes active right now. Across human space, things began to move. On the dark side of Earth's moon, massive doors opened in what appeared to be empty craters. The UNSF Retribution emerged first. A ship so large it looked more like a floating city than a military vessel. 10 kilometers from front to back, its hull was covered in armor plating thick enough to stop planetary bombardment. Captain Luis Martinez stood on the bridge of his ship, the battlecruiser Iron Will. At 4 kilometers long, it was considered a medium-sized vessel by human military standards. His ship had been hidden in the asteroid belt for 3 years, waiting for this moment. All systems green, Captain, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Davis. Weapons charged, armor sealed, crew ready for combat. Louis smiled grimly. His ship alone carried enough firepower to level a continent, and it was just one of dozens of similar vessels moving into position. Take us to Rally Point Alpha. It's time to show our guests what human hospitality looks like. In orbit around Jupiter, the carrier Stormfront activated its cloaking systems and began launching fighters. Each fighter was unmanned, controlled by artificial intelligence that could react faster than any living pilot. The carrier held 500 of these fighters, and there were 12 carriers hidden throughout the outer system. Commander Beth Johnson piloted her stealth reconnaissance ship through the outer system, gathering intelligence on the alien fleet. Her ship, the Silent Hunter, was invisible to most sensors and could observe the enemy without being detected. Command this. Is Silent Hunter, she transmitted on a secured channel. The alien ships are beautiful, but they have weak points. Energy systems are centralized, and their hull plating is thin. They've optimized for speed and efficiency, not for surviving heavy damage. Back on Mars, Diana received reports from dozens of ships and stations. The human fleet was awakening from its long sleep, and it was much larger than anyone outside the military had imagined. Admiral, we have contact from the European Defense Fleet, reported Communications Officer Jane Miller. 12 dreadnoughts. Ready for action. The Asian Alliance Fleet reports 18 heavy cruisers standing by. The African Federation has 8 missile destroyers armed and ready. Diana looked at the tactical display as more and more green dots appeared. Each dot represented a human warship, and there were hundreds of them. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields, buried on airless moons, or disguised as mining stations. The human military had learned from Earth's history that the best way to survive a surprise attack was to make sure the enemy never knew where all your forces were located. Ma'am, we're receiving transmission from Admiral Chen aboard the Worldbreaker, Mike announced. Put him through, Diana said. The face of Admiral Robert Chen appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Worldbreaker stretched out like an aircraft hangar. The ship was humanity's largest military vessel, 20 kilometers of pure destruction wrapped in armor plating. Diana, the big guns are ready, Robert said with a slight smile. My ship and the other super dreadnoughts are moving into position. The aliens picked the wrong species to threaten. Good to hear, Robert. What's your status on the special weapons? Systems operational? These aliens want to see impressive firepower? We can certainly oblige them. Diana turned back. To the main display? The alien fleet still sat at the edge of the system, probably thinking they were in complete control of the situation. They had given humanity 6 hours to surrender. Those 6 hours were almost up, but humanity had used the time wisely. Admiral? Called out Major Sarah Kim from the intelligence station. We've finished analyzing the alien communication. Their translator systems are more advanced than we initially thought. They've been monitoring our communications for months, possibly years. So they know we're not defenseless, Diana said. Yes, ma'am. But based on their behavior, they still think our exploration ships represent our primary military capability. They have no idea about our hidden fleets. Diana looked around the command center. Every station was busy with activity. Officers coordinated the movement of hundreds of ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. These were not the elegant, efficient designs that the aliens favored. Human ships were built like fortresses, designed to absorb incredible amounts of damage while delivering even more destruction to their enemies. "Time to contact," Mike announced. "Our primary battle groups report ready. Secondary fleets are moving into flanking positions. Stealth units are in position for reconnaissance and surprise attacks." Diana walked to her command chair and sat down around her. The command center hummed with quiet efficiency. These people had trained for years for this moment. They knew their jobs and they were ready to defend humanity against any threat. "Open a channel to Commander Morrison on the horizon's edge," Diana ordered. Jake Morrison's face appeared on a smaller screen. He looked tired but determined. "Admiral Ross, good to see you. The alien fleet is still holding position. Expect our surrender in 30 minutes. They're going to be disappointed," Diana said. "Commander, you and your crew have done excellent work. Now step back and let us handle the diplomatic response." "A pleasure, Admiral. What are your orders?" Diana looked at the tactical display one more time. Hundreds of human ships were now in position, hidden throughout the solar system. The aliens thought they were facing a single exploration vessel and whatever primitive defenses humanity might have cobbled together. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Keth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Blade, watching the timer count down to humanity's surrender deadline. His yellow eyes studied the tactical displays that showed his fleet of 400 ships in perfect formation. At the edge of the human solar system, everything was proceeding exactly as it had with the 17 other species the Valkan Empire had conquered. "Admiral, we are detecting some unusual readings," reported a science officer, Commander Vell. The thin alien's 6 arms moved quickly across multiple control panels. "There appear to be energy signatures throughout the human system that we did not detect before." "Elaborate," Keth said, his voice carrying the confidence of a commander who had never faced serious opposition. "The signatures are faint, but they suggest the presence of additional ships. Perhaps the humans have a small defense fleet after all." Vell's secondary arms worked on a different set of controls. "The readings are scattered throughout their system. Nothing that appears threatening to our forces." Admiral Keth made the growling sound that passed for laughter among his people. "Of course they have some primitive warships. Every species does. It matters little. Our smallest escort vessel could destroy their largest battleship." The main view screen showed the distant glow of the human sun and the small blue dot that was Earth. Keth had studied the intelligence reports on humanity. They were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel.
Oh.
Their largest ships were exploration vessels and cargo haulers. Their weapons technology was crude chemical explosives and primitive energy beams. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human exploration ship," announced Communications Officer Rath. "They say they have consulted with their defense council and are ready to provide a response." "Excellent. Display the transmission." The human commander appeared on screen again, but this time he looked different. More confident, less worried. Behind him, Keth could see increased activity. On the human bridge, "Admiral Keth, we have indeed consulted with our defense council," Commander Morrison said. "I would like to introduce you to Fleet Admiral Diana Ross, who will be handling our response to your generous offer." The image changed to show a different human, an older female with gray hair and cold blue eyes. She wore a military uniform that looked more formal than the exploration ship commander's clothing. Behind her, Keth could see what appeared to be a large military command center. "Admiral Keth," the human female said, her voice calm and steady. "I am Fleet Admiral Ross of the United Human Defense Force. I understand you have made certain demands regarding humanity's future." "Yes. Your species will submit to Valkan authority immediately." "This is not a negotiation," Keth replied firmly. "I see. Well, Admiral, I think there may have been some confusion about the current situation. Perhaps we should clarify exactly who is in what position here." Keth was about to respond when his tactical officer, Major Dex, called out urgently. "Sir, I am detecting massive energy spikes throughout the human system. Multiple contacts are Appearing on our sensors, what kind of contacts? Keth demanded. Ships, sir. Very large ships. They are much larger than anything in our intelligence reports. Admiral Ross smiled on the view screen. Allow me to introduce you to humanity's actual military forces, Admiral. What you encountered earlier was just our exploration division. The space around Keth's fleet began to change. Massive shapes materialized out of what had seemed to be empty space. The first ship that became visible was enormous, easily 10 kilometers long and covered in heavy armor plating. Its hull bristled with weapon systems that looked like they could crack planets. Impossible, breathed Commander Vell. Our sensors detected nothing of this size. More ships continued to appear, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each one was larger than the biggest Vulcan dreadnought. Where Vulcan ships were elegant curves of crystalline energy, these human vessels looked like flying fortresses. They were all angles and armor, designed not for beauty, but for destruction. Sir, contacts now number over 600, Major Dex reported, his voice shaking slightly. Each vessel masses significantly more than our heaviest battleships. The energy readings. Sir, some of these ships appear to be powered by artificial black holes. Admiral Keth felt something he had not experienced in 40 years of conquest. Fear. The tactical display showed his 400 ships completely surrounded by a human fleet that made the Vulcan Empire's finest warships look like toys. This is not possible, Keth said, more to himself than to his crew. Our intelligence. Reports indicated that humans were barely capable of interplanetary travel. Your intelligence was incomplete, Admiral Ross said calmly from the view screen. What you saw were our civilian exploration and transport vessels. This is our military. One of the human ships, a sleek black vessel about 3 kilometers long, moved closer to the Vulcan fleet. As it approached, more ships, just like it, appeared around it. They had been completely invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Stealth technology, Commander Vell whispered. They have perfected large-scale stealth technology. We had no idea they were there. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the stealth ship Ghost Protocol opened a communication channel. Admiral Keth, I am Captain Mitchell. My ship specializes in making other ships disappear. We've been studying your fleet for the past 2 hours. Your ships are impressive, but they have several critical weaknesses. Weaknesses? Keth managed to ask. Your energy systems are centralized. Your armor is designed for efficiency, not protection. Your weapons are optimized for fighting opponents with similar technology levels. Captain Mitchell's voice was professional, almost friendly. In short, your ships are built by a species that has never faced serious opposition. Admiral Ross took over the conversation again. Admiral Keth, you mentioned that your fleet represents the finest military engineering in the galaxy. I would like to demonstrate what human military engineering looks like. One of the smaller human ships, barely a kilometer long, moved away from the main fleet. It targeted a large asteroid floating at the edge of the system. The asteroid was roughly the size of a small moon, made of solid rock and ice. That asteroid is approximately 50 kilometers in diameter, Admiral Ross announced. We will now demonstrate what we call a basic kinetic penetrator. This is considered light weaponry by human standards. The human ship fired a single projectile. It was not a beam of energy like Vulcan weapons, but a solid piece of metal accelerated to incredible speed. When it struck the asteroid, the result was devastating. The entire asteroid simply vanished. One moment it was there, a massive chunk of rock and ice. The next moment there was nothing but an expanding cloud of dust and debris. Impossible, Commander Vell said again. The energy required for such destruction ... was generated by one of our destroyer-class vessels, Admiral Ross continued. We have 200 similar ships in this engagement, plus considerably larger vessels with proportionally greater firepower. Admiral Keth looked at his tactical displays with growing horror. The human fleet was arranged in perfect formation. Around his ships, every Vulcan vessel was targeted by multiple human weapons. The energy readings his sensors were detecting suggested that humanity possessed enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. This cannot be, Keth said weakly. No species develops such military capabilities so quickly. You are correct. Admiral Ross replied. Most species do not. But humans have a rather unique approach to military development. We tend to assume that someone, somewhere, is planning to attack us, so we prepare accordingly. The human fleet held its position, a demonstration of overwhelming force that made the Valkan Empire's finest warships look primitive by comparison. 400 Valkan ships faced nearly 1,000 human vessels, each one capable of destroying multiple enemy ships. Admiral Keth realized that his empire's expansion had just encountered something it had never faced before, a species that was better at warfare than the Valkans were. Admiral Keth stared at the expanding dust cloud where the asteroid had been moments before. His reptilian hands gripped the command rail of his bridge so tightly that the metal began to bend. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen such casual destruction of a planetary-sized object. "Sir, all fleet commanders are requesting orders," reported Communications Officer Rath, his voice barely steady. "They want to know if we should retreat or attempt to fight." Keth looked at the tactical display. His 400 ships were completely surrounded by human vessels that dwarfed even the Valkan Empire's largest dreadnoughts. Each human ship bristled with weapons that could apparently vaporize moons with single shots. "Tell them to hold position," Keth said quietly. Any aggressive action would be suicide. Commander Vell worked frantically at his science station, trying to understand what his sensors were showing him. "Admiral, the energy signatures from these human ships are beyond our understanding. Some appear to be powered by controlled singularities. Others show energy patterns that suggest matter reactions on scales we thought impossible." Admiral Ross appeared on the main view screen again, her expression calm but serious. "Admiral Keth, I hope our demonstration was educational. However, since you seem interested in impressive displays of military engineering, perhaps you would like to see something truly remarkable. What more could you possibly show us?" Keth asked, though he dreaded the answer. "What you have seen so far represents our rapid response fleet. Ships that can be deployed quickly to deal with immediate threats. But humanity has been preparing for potential alien contact for decades. We have built things that go far beyond rapid response." The space around the Valkan fleet began to shimmer and distort. At first, Keth thought it might be some kind of sensor malfunction. Then massive shapes began to materialize out of seemingly empty space. The first ship that became visible made Keth's bridge crew gasp in unison. It was enormous beyond anything they had imagined possible. 20 kilometers from bow to stern, it looked more like a floating city than a spaceship. Its hull was covered in armor plating thick enough to build entire space stations from. "The UNSF Worldbreaker," Admiral Ross announced calmly. "Our first and largest super dreadnought. It contains manufacturing facilities capable of building entire fleets. Research laboratories that have developed technologies your empire has never dreamed of. Enough firepower to reduce star systems to cosmic dust." Major Dex at the tactical station was making choking sounds as he tried to report what his sensors were detecting. "Sir, that ship. It masses more than our entire home fleet, the weapons it carries. Each gun turret is larger than our biggest cruiser." More ships continued to materialize around the Valkan fleet. Super dreadnoughts, each one unique, but all sharing the same theme of overwhelming size and firepower. The Thunder God appeared next, its hull studded with launch bays that could deploy thousands of fighters. The Planet Killer materialized nearby, its forward section clearly designed around a single massive weapon that could crack worlds. "These are our heavy assault vessels," Admiral Ross continued, as if she were giving a routine briefing instead of demonstrating the power to destroy civilizations. Each one represents decades of development and construction. They are designed for one purpose: to ensure that humanity survives no matter what threatens us. Captain Sarah Mitchell's stealth ship moved closer to the Valkan flagship.
"Admiral?"
"Keth, would you like to know how many ships we actually have in this system?" "How many?" Keth whispered. "Approximately 4,000 combat vessels of various classes. What you initially encountered was about 15% of our actual strength. The rest of our fleet is currently deployed protecting our colonies, exploring beyond the galactic rim. We're stationed in dimensional spaces that your technology cannot detect." Commander Vell looked up from his station. his face pale. That is impossible. No species could build and maintain such a massive fleet. You are thinking like a species that conquers others for their resources, Captain Mitchell replied. Humans build their own resources, those manufacturing bays you see on our larger ships. They can create new vessels, new weapons, new technologies. We do not need to take from others because we have learned to make what we need. Admiral Ross took control of the conversation again. Admiral Keth, your empire has conquered 17 species. In each case, you found primitive civilizations that were easily overwhelmed by your superior technology and tactics. You have never encountered a species that was specifically preparing for your arrival. Preparing for our arrival? Keth asked. Humanity has known about the Vulcan Empire for over 50 years. Our deep space monitoring networks detected your expansion pattern decades ago. We have been watching you conquer other species, studying your tactics, analyzing your technology. The main screen split to show footage of Vulcan ships attacking other worlds. Keth recognized several of the battles from his own service record. We learned everything about how you fight, what weapons you use, what strategies you prefer. And then we designed our entire military specifically to counter your capabilities, Admiral Ross continued. Every human warship you see was built with one goal in mind, to ensure that humanity would never suffer the fate of those 17 other species. A new ship appeared near the Vulcan fleet, this one different from the others. It was smaller, only about 5 kilometers long, but it radiated an energy signature that made every sensor on Keth's ship scream warnings. The UNSF Reality Breaker, Admiral Ross announced. Our most advanced research vessel. It has been developing weapons based on principles that most species consider theoretical impossibilities. Would you like a demonstration of what happens when human scientists are given unlimited resources and told to create the ultimate deterrent? No, Keth said quickly.
Oh.
No demonstration is necessary. Captain Luis Martinez of the battlecruiser Iron Will opened his own communication channel. Admiral Keth, I want you to understand something important.
Yes.
Every human ship you see, every weapon we have shown you, every piece of technology we have demonstrated was built for one purpose: defense. We did not build this fleet to conquer other species. We built it to make sure that no one could conquer us. But make no mistake, added Captain Mitchell from her stealth ship, while our intentions are defensive, our capabilities are absolute. We can destroy your entire empire without leaving the star system. We can eliminate every Vulcan ship in the galaxy without risking a single human life. The tactical display on Keth's bridge now showed the true scope of the human fleet. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect formation, each one capable of devastating entire worlds. The Vulcan fleet looked like a collection of toys floating in the middle of a sea of giants. This is not possible, Commander Vell said again, but his voice carried no conviction. The evidence was overwhelming. Admiral Ross appeared on the screen one final time. Admiral Keth, humanity has a saying: speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer diplomatic solutions to our problems, but we have learned from our history that diplomacy only works when you have the strength to back up your words. What you see around you is humanity's big stick. We built it hoping we would never need to use it, but we built it very, very well. The human fleet held its formation, a demonstration of engineering and military capability that made the Vulcan Empire's finest achievements look primitive. Admiral Keth realized that his people had encountered something completely unprecedented, a species that was better at warfare than they were, but chose not to use that advantage for conquest. For the first time in Vulcan history, retreat was not just an option, but a necessity. The silence stretched across space for what felt like hours. Admiral Keth stood on his bridge, surrounded by displays showing 4,000 human warships arranged in perfect formation around his fleet. Each alien officer on the bridge stared at their stations, trying to process what they had witnessed. Commander Vell was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral, what are your orders? Keth looked at the tactical display one more time. His 400 ships, the pride of the Vulcan Empire, looked like children's toys floating among giants. The human fleet could destroy his entire force without any risk to themselves. More importantly, They could probably destroy the entire Valkan Empire if they chose to. Open a communication channel to Admiral Ross, Keth said quietly. Channel open, sir, reported Communications Officer Rath. Admiral Ross appeared on the main screen, her expression calm and patient. Behind her, the command center continued its quiet, efficient operations. Yes, Admiral Keth. Admiral Ross, Keth began, his voice carrying none of the arrogance it had held ours earlier. I believe we may have misunderstood the nature of this encounter. In what way? Ross asked. We came here expecting to find a primitive species that would submit to our authority. Instead, we have found. Keth paused, struggling with words. We have found something unprecedented. Diana Ross nodded slowly. Admiral, your empire has been very successful because you have encountered species that were not prepared for your arrival. Humanity is different. We've been preparing for contact with hostile aliens for decades. Dr. Tom Wilson, the xenobiologist, aboard the human flagship Retribution, had been monitoring Valkan communications throughout the encounter. He stepped forward to address Admiral Keth directly. Admiral, my analysis of your species suggests that you have never encountered meaningful resistance. Your expansion pattern shows that you find primitive civilizations and integrate them into your empire through overwhelming technological superiority. That is correct, Keth admitted. The problem is that approach only works against species that are not expecting you. Humanity has been watching your empire expand for 50 years. We knew you would eventually reach our space. We prepared accordingly. Captain Luis Martinez from the Iron Will joined the conversation. Admiral Keth, we studied every battle your empire has fought. We analyzed your ships, your weapons, your tactics. Then we designed our entire military to counter everything you could possibly do. But more than that, added Captain Sarah Mitchell from her stealth ship. We designed our fleet to exceed your capabilities by such a massive margin that resistance would be pointless. We call it the overwhelming force doctrine. Admiral Keth felt something he had never experienced before, complete military helplessness. What do you want from us? Diana Ross smiled slightly. That is an excellent question, Admiral. The answer might surprise you. We want nothing, she continued. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want your people to serve us. Do not want to rule your empire. The Valkan bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. Every species they had ever encountered wanted something from others. Territory, resources, slaves, tribute. The concept of a militarily superior force that wanted nothing was completely foreign to them. Then what is the purpose of this demonstration? Keth asked. The purpose is to establish a new understanding between our species. You came here to conquer humanity. We are showing you that conquest is not possible. But we are also showing you that we choose not to conquer you in return. Commander Morrison from the exploration ship Horizon's Edge spoke up. Admiral Keth, humanity has learned from our own history that conquest creates endless cycles of conflict. Approach. What approach? Keth asked. Mutual benefit, Diana Ross replied. Your empire has technologies that could benefit humanity. We have technologies that could benefit your empire. Instead of one species dominating the other, we could trade, share knowledge, explore the galaxy. Together, Major Dex looked up from his tactical station. Admiral, they are offering an alliance instead of demanding surrender. More than an alliance, Captain Martinez clarified. We are offering to share our defensive technologies with your empire. The weapons and ships you have seen today could protect Valkan worlds just as they protect human worlds. Admiral Keth was quiet for a long moment. This was completely outside his experience. The Valkan Empire had built its power through conquest and dominance. The idea of equals working together was almost impossible to understand. Why would you share such powerful technology? Keth asked. Because we have learned that having strong neighbors makes us safer, not weaker, Diana Ross replied. If your empire has access to human defensive technology, you will be better able to protect yourselves against other threats. That means fewer wars, fewer conflicts, fewer reasons for us to have to use our military. Dr. Wilson stepped forward again. Admiral, Our analysis suggests that your empire expanded through conquest because you believed it was the only way to ensure your security. But there is another way. What way? Keth asked. Build relationships instead of building empires. Trade instead of taking. Cooperate instead of conquering. Captain Mitchell added, "We are not naive, Admiral. We know that not every species will choose cooperation. That is why we built this fleet. But we prefer to use it as a deterrent rather than a weapon." "You are offering us a choice," Keth said slowly. "Yes," Diana Ross confirmed. "You can return to your empire and report that humanity is too strong to conquer, but willing to cooperate. You can begin diplomatic and trade relations that will benefit both our species, or, Keth asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Or you can try to fight us. In which case, this demonstration will seem gentle compared to what happens next." The bridge of the crystal blade was completely silent. Every Valkan officer understood the implications. They had encountered a species that could destroy their entire civilization, but was choosing not to. The choice was simple: cooperation or annihilation.
What would these diplomatic relations involve?
Keth asked. Trade agreements, technology sharing, joint exploration missions, cultural exchange. Normal diplomatic activities between sovereign species, Diana Ross replied. And if other species threaten either of us, then we defend each other. Is what allies do. Admiral Keth looked around his bridge at his officers. They were all waiting for his decision. The choice would affect not just his fleet, but the entire future of the Valkan Empire. "Admiral Ross," Keth said finally, "I believe this is the beginning of a new era for both our species. We accept your offer of diplomatic relations." "Excellent," Diana Ross replied. "Captain Mitchell will escort your flagship to Earth, where we can begin formal negotiations. The rest of your fleet is free to return to Valkan space with the news that humanity is interested in friendship, not conquest." As the human fleet began to disperse, Admiral Keth realized that his empire's age of expansion through conquest was over. But perhaps something better was beginning.